This is Wheel Bearings. I'm Dan Roth from Forbes.
Oh, I'm Rebecca Linland from Rebecca Drives. I keep forgetting I'm second.
We're going to have to work on this.
And I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
All right. Well, welcome to episode 159. We're going to keep it tight. I promise. I promise. So let's talk about what we're driving. Sam, we had
promised that every episode for the last 158.
Listen, it is 11:45 a.m. on Tuesday morning right now. We're gonna get this done.
All right.
So Sam, since you're giving me crap, what are you driving? What have you been driving?
So I had the BMW 228i xDrive Gran Coupe, yet another in BMW.
Very fancy.
Kind of overly complex names, but
was it Das Scheiss?
Yeah, currently in the BMW lineup, in the 2 Series lineup, there are 2 very distinctly different vehicles, and when I say different, I mean like they are completely different. There's the 2 Series Coupe and convertible, which is built on a rear drive platform, which I think is shared largely with 3 Series. And then there's the 2 Series Gran Coupe, and also in Europe there are other variants as well, which are actually built on a transverse engine front-wheel drive platform that is shared with Mini. It's the same platform used for the Mini Countryman. And so it's also used for the X1 and the X2 and a few other things that we don't get here. So the Gran Coupe is on this transverse engine front drive platform. Nice, 4-door, fastback sedan, decent styling, nothing too exciting. It doesn't have an excessively large grille. And it looks fine. Interior is nice enough, typical, modern BMW. And the engine, the powertrain is the 2-liter turbo, 4-cylinder, 228 horsepower, and all-wheel drive. So for the U.S. market, it's only available with all-wheel drive. There's no front-wheel drive version offered here of the 2 Series Gran Coupe. You can also get it as a 235, which has 300 horsepower. But the base version, is adequate. The performance wasn't really a problem with this. I had no complaints about at least the acceleration performance and braking. Steering was kind of numb and non-existent. Nothing much there. Didn't really have any opportunity to evaluate the extra traction capabilities of the all-wheel drive. My big complaint about this thing is, like so many modern BMWs, is it's really expensive for what you're getting. Base price on the 228 starts at $37,500, and the one I had was about $49,000. And
that's a lot of money for a Dodge Dart.
Yeah, it is. When you look at the specs, this car is almost exactly the same size, similar wheelbase and so on to cars like the Honda Civic and the Mazda 3 sedan. In fact, the Mazda 3 has actually got slightly more room inside and actually a notably bigger trunk. And currently, the Mazda 3 sedan, the top end version of that is the premium, which with all-wheel drive, and currently there's only one engine in there. That's the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, 186 horsepower. That one with all-wheel drive is $29,000, and that's loaded and it's got everything in it. But
you're driving a Mazda as opposed to a BMW. So when you go into the bar to impress the chicks, it's not going to happen.
True. But I don't go into the bar to impress the chicks.
Well, I will say
I want a car that I actually enjoy driving.
Yeah,
and Mazda this fall will have the 2.5 liter turbo that's in the CX-9 and the CX-5, and also in the Mazda 6 coming to the Mazda 3. So you'll have a 250 horsepower all-wheel drive Mazda 3 that I think arguably has an actually nicer interior. I think that the design has probably more character than the 228. And it's probably going to cost about $33,000 because the Mazda 6 turbo is $35,000. So it's probably going to be, in that price range. So $5,000 less than the base price of the 228.
I agree with you. The pricing, it's funny that you mentioned pricing because I was just putting up my review of the Cadillac XT6 and Nicole Wakeland had driven the BMW X7 and she put her review up on my site and it was like $100 and something thousand. And the Cadillac was like my test version tapped out at 63,000 and the XT6 tops out at about 72-ish. Mm-hmm. And while the X7 is bigger, it still really struck me that that's that's another half a car difference. It's $30,000 difference. And I don't know that you're getting $30,000 worth of value.
Especially, I haven't driven the X7 yet, but, certainly with the 228, I don't see that you're actually getting, even $5,000 or $10,000 worth of extra value, aside from, the cachet of it having that BMW badge on it, the twin kidney grille.
You should feel that though. Like you should feel that you are in a BMW. You should feel that you should have that experience when you're driving a BMW. That should be something that comes through every time in my mind.
And in the 228, more so, I think, in the 2 Series Coupe, that is definitely more the case. It feels more lively. Of all current BMWs, that I've driven, the 2 Series Coupe is actually probably my favorite. It's the most. It's got that classic BMW feel to it. Lighter, nimbler. The Gran Coupe, it just. I don't know. It doesn't have that feel to it.
So is this almost like a stepping stone car? Like if I sort of squint at this, you can see that BMW is working a bit to evolve their design language because it's different proportions. This is front wheel drive. And they're trying to find where that lower sort of rung of their cars are, that entry level. This would be the 3 Series. Which has sort of grown and gotten more expensive. It's still an icon, but they need something to fill in that slot that the 3 Series filled for so long. And so I'm wondering if that's what this car is sort of meant to do as they're working to establish the 2 Series sort of sedan, Gran Coupe, whatever else however else they want to make it. But you can see that they're working some things out, and on the website, they show the premium models, which I think they look pretty good. They probably also cost like $7,000.
It looks fine. I think it's a little more plain, than 3 Series or 5 Series, but I don't have any real complaints about the design. It's just the driving experience in it doesn't really excite me.
Yeah, well, I think that's where it needs to not fall down, right? It can't drive like an economy car.
It's got to be the ultimate driving machine.
Yeah,
it has to live up, regardless of the size of these vehicles. It has to live up to that tagline.
It's got to remind you of a 2002 or a 325.
A lot of BMWs have failed to do that over the past decade.
Yeah, well, because that's not what they're about anymore. And if you want that's Mazda. If you want a 2002, go buy a Mazda 3, like you were saying, or the Mazda 6. Like that's going to give you that feeling. Not so much the 2 or the 3 Series. The 3 Series will give you a little bit of that, but
the new 3 Series is definitely a step up compared to the previous generation.
I think we also have to make the note that most BMWs are leased. So that's a different price point than, I realize the MSRP still comes into play, but that is something to think about too, that most of these vehicles are leased. And I would think that you can probably get a gently used one for a pretty good price.
Yeah, well, you could probably lease a used one for, but they're leased by that guy at the bar who wants to impress the chicks, like you're talking about.
Exactly.
It is like some of this end of the market is going to be people looking for a performance bargain, and they're going to buy the hot rod version. And I don't necessarily mean performance bargain because it's still going to be expensive, but they're looking for that. But the other buyer is the one who just buys it because of the brand. and because they like the tech that's in it or something. How is the tech, by the way? How is iDrive and all that stuff? And it has light up trim. Does it have the light up trim?
No, this one did not. But the iDrive, was basically the same in this as what you'd find in pretty much any other modern BMW, which is good. I mean, it's a good system. It has this one has the My BMW assistant in there, so you can, as you're driving along, you don't have to find the voice button on the steering wheel. Just say hey BMW, turn up the volume, I'm cold, turn down the temperature, things like that. So it's actually a pretty good system. It does various controls, so you don't even have to mess with the control knob. So that system actually works really well. And if you're doing navigation, it will it's got, I wouldn't it's not true natural language, but it's a lot closer to natural language processing. So you don't have to go through a whole bunch of steps to enter a navigation command. Just say navigate home, or navigate to Whole Foods, and then, and if there's multiple choices, it'll show the list on the screen, say pick one. But, if you give it a specific address, it will do that in one sequence. You don't have to go through multiple steps to do it, which has long been the complaint with voice control systems in cars is, having to remember the exact syntax and going through multiple steps of, what's the house number, what's the street number, what's city.
It's like being on a phone tree.
Yeah. So these modern vehicles have the ability to do much closer to natural language voice processing, and makes them a lot more useful and a lot more effective. Okay.
So the final verdict, though, sounds like just buy the Mazda 3 with the turbo when it comes here, and don't spend your cash on the BMW.
Yeah, I mean, if what you want is a BMW badge, fine, go for it. But if you actually want what a BMW used to represent in terms of driving capabilities, then maybe wait for the Mazda.
Okay. All right. Let's jump on. Let's move on. Rebecca, your turn. You were driving the XT6. You mentioned it. I actually had an XT6 back in the before times. We took it to Manhattan actually last summer, and it's a little big for that, but it's narrowish. It's not like driving a Suburban or a Tahoe in town. So I actually thought it was great for that. It was great on the highway. I had the Platinum, so it was more than the one you've got. And I kind of struggled with the value a little bit, just like we are with the BMW. But I want your take on it. And there's a link we'll put in the show as well to Rebecca Drives for the XT6 Premium review.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So I was actually in a unique position, hopefully a unique position, of actually really needing this car because I didn't have power and I didn't have internet after Tropical Storm Isaiah or Aziza or whomever, him. And so I was delighted when this vehicle showed up the day after the storm because I know it has a Wi-Fi hotspot. Yep. So I didn't actually track my fuel economy on this one because I spent so much time idling in the car.
Yeah, I will say its fuel economy is about what you can expect from something that size. It's going to be in the 20s.
Yeah, it's rated for 17 city, 24 highway, 20 combined, which I would say I actually got pretty close to that, which is impressive considering how much, that's what I should have said, is it's impressive considering how much I had it idling while I checked email and just getting online and everything. So, this is one of those things where this is a product where I feel like it did a lot of things really, really well and with minimal drama. And I appreciated that especially given the circumstances that I was in where my mom didn't have power. My mom and my sister, they lived together. Her house didn't have power. My brother didn't have power. I didn't have power. And this went on for days and days and days. And so being able to charge my phone, being able to get online with the Wi-Fi hotspot was really a big thing and a big help. And so, it's one of those extras that GM has offered for years, and I don't think gets enough credit for. So once I was out on the road in the XT6, overall, it's a really good, I would say mid-size plus is how I saw it described, which I thought was a good description of it.
I mean, it's the nicest Traverse there is.
Well,
actually, it's actually based on the XT5, not the Traverse platform.
Well,
it's a stretched
XT5.
There.
Okay. No, it did. I thought it drove well, especially in sport mode.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I went down to JFK to pick up my sister when she and her husband and daughter flew in from Florida or Kentucky, rather. They were on vacation. She was at a horse camp kind of thing. And, it was very easy to load and unload the bags, very comfortable in the back. My niece was able to charge all of their devices because they were going home to a dark house. And so I do think that, from a driving and overall, just an ownership, 1 week of ownership experience, I think it just did a lot of things really well. Things were ergonomic where I wanted them to be. I would not have minded more USB ports, and maybe the upper trims do that. This was the premium, which I think is kind of in the middle. The base of the car is 58,000, and then this as tested was 63, almost 64,000. So it didn't have a ton of accoutrements, but that's okay. I mean, if you want even more, you can get this up to 73,000, as I mentioned. But the fit and finish was really nice. I'm not crazy about the shiny interior. I like to have a matte finish more, and that was a part of the review that I had to take out because I'm confined to 200 words. But so the only thing that I would have liked and I would have preferred for a little bit more upscale feel is a matte finish.
Shiny on the trim, you mean?
On the trim, yeah. Right, on the trim. So it still has that, like the piano black. This wasn't piano black, but it's shiny. I mean, it's basically, it's shiny and it has that kind of shiny feel. I like that matte, soothing, open pore wood kind of experience a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the pictures too. Like, it actually looks like it's wood too. It's just it's been varnished.
Right. Yeah, it's grained. Like, it has a grain facade
I don't think I've seen that before.
And again, I mean, it's nice. It was, the buttons and the switches were fine. They were where they were supposed to be. It had a very, very good, very handy wireless charging slot that worked really, really well. Even when I have one of those, finger hold things on the back of my phone, and so a lot of wireless chargers don't work with it, but this one did really well. 8-inch screen. The screen did get a lot of fingerprints on it, which was sub-op, but overall, it was nicely done. I thought that the V6 engine responded really, really well. Plenty of power whenever I wanted it. I really, I enjoyed the driving experience with it. And one of the things that, and just for clarity, it has 310 horsepower, as I dug through their site to discover a 9-speed automatic. But I think that I think overall, driving this Cadillac XT6 was just a good, solid experience for me. And I enjoyed it. I think it's a really good family car. I think it's, the price point for what you're getting, I feel like is actually pretty good. It's expensive. It's a Cadillac. It's supposed to be expensive. But I felt like overall, it really lived up to the name.
Yeah.
So I liked it.
I struggled a little bit more with it living up to its name. I did think it does drive very well. I thought the interior, and the one I had didn't have even the contrasting color. Like, you had brown seats with the contrast stitching. Mine was all black. And so,
that's brutal.
Again, my complaint about an all black interior, like, okay, it's a $90-something thousand car, but I can't tell you if it's good or bad. Like, they feel okay, but just, how that, it just.
I'm not crazy about black interiors at all.
For me, like, one of the things you're paying for is the design and the style and the colors and material choices. And if you go with all black, it's either like well, you don't have any imagination, or like we're trying to hide something. So that's kind of on the people that spec the cars, both for the fleet and for the dealers when the dealers are ordering inventory.
Yes.
You can get colors in these, and it looks a lot better.
And Cadillac has some really great color options for the interiors.
Yeah,
they do.
And
the other thing that is of note, it doesn't affect the experience at all, but man, they love that emblem outline, that shield thing. Like that is everywhere.
Well, that's, that's consistent branding. So I'll give them that. I'm still a little bit miffed they took the Merlettes off, but they keep taking elements off the shield. But that's okay.
Yeah. But it is, that is reflected everywhere. Yeah. It's hilarious.
It's good looking. I think that it's going to struggle to compete with the Navigator in terms of the first impression it makes. Because the Navigator... Well,
it's not really...
Not the Navigator, I'm sorry. The
Aviator.
Yeah.
The Aviator, right, yeah. It's in an interesting niche, though, because it's a pretty comfortable 7-seat.
Yeah.
But it's not huge, it really is that kind of mid-size plus. It's if you want a little bit more room, if you want, a little bit more than a mid-size, but not as big as something like the X7, the Escalade, the Navigator. This is that it slots in there kind of nicely, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it's a great choice. It's a great size, especially where the way we both used it, right? Like, that's the perfect use case for these, and that's what people are doing with them. It's you're a round town car. You know what? Yep. I got to go pick up a bunch of people. Cool, my car can do it. I've got extra seats. We're gonna run to the airport. Like
yes.
And last year, last summer when I went on the launch drive for this thing in DC, I actually did sit in the third row for when we were coming back from dinner.
Oh wow!
And because the proportions that they gave this thing, it's a little bit taller than an Aviator is. It's shorter. It's not as long, but it is a little bit taller. So you sit a little more upright. But that third row is actually pretty useful even for adults. I wouldn't want to go on a long road trip, sitting in the third row. I'm 5'11", but for just to go out to dinner or something, have 3 couples in there, not a big deal. You could definitely do it.
Yeah, no, I think I really liked this size. It was easy for me to get in and out of. Also, the seats, adjust 15,000 different ways. So the visibility was quite good as well. I didn't have any issues with the A-pillar. And one of the things too is that I was literally dodging down trees and branches at any moment because Greenwich, it looks like mini tornadoes went through this place. And so, all of a sudden I would have to stop.
You could win a post-storm autocross with this thing.
Yes, exactly.
But that was the surprising part was, the chassis tuning and the steering feel and everything, especially when you put it in sport mode, if it had the adaptive
the different mode. You have drive modes for sure.
It felt like it was tuned by people who tune cars.
Oh, care about it.
I went right the hell up the merit on this thing. Thank
you for stopping by.
Well, this was a year or something.
Blah 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 blah.
Next time I will. We have to get pizza.
Excellent. Yes.
But bring your own pepperoni, please.
I used. We'll get to that.
No pineapple.
I used every bit of the 300 something horsepower. And it's a rever, so you gotta get it up in the RPM range a little bit to get that power, but. It just, it feels pretty good. So I was impressed with it. Where I'm less impressed with it is I didn't like the capacitive touch stuff on the center console. Like it works and it's not bad for what it is, but it's frustrating and distracting. And then just some of the other switchgear that's around it and stuff. And just, so for the money, you start to scratch your head, especially when you look at the competition and you go, well, this one feels nicer, whether or not it's actually nicer. Even just the Telluride. And we'll come back to those.
Absolutely. But I think on the Switches, the only issue, I had 2 things. I hated the fact, and this is really stupid, but I hated the fact that the volume was sideways. It ran horizontally. I really like vertical, up and down.
Is it like a rocker switch or a slider or something?
It's 2 separate buttons, and they run horizontally on the right side of the steering wheel. And I I hated that. It was never something I could get used to. The other thing is the cruise control. Putting it in it doesn't default to adaptive cruise control. So you have to like ask it. And I've run into this with other GM products as well. And you've got to like press a button and then tap the top of your head and rub your belly at the same time and be driving simultaneously. Yeah. It was super complicated. And I the first time, once I got it in adaptive cruise control, it seems to stay there, but it was very, very distracting, and it was really complicated. And I did it while I was on the highway, of course, because that's when you do these things, when you're trying to use adaptive cruise control. But then I was thankful that I finally got it there, because I just found it to be really, really distracting. And I don't know, did you have that experience at all?
I don't remember it being difficult, weird? But there are some cars that it does, like they have two different buttons and you've got to look and see which one and decipher that. The Hyundai Ioniq I drove last week, I think, had the same thing, where it was a button for cruise and a different button for adaptive cruise. Or maybe it was the Ram. And we'll get to everything I've been driving.
Yes, I know. We do have to get to everything you've been driving.
But I don't remember it being that difficult. I do remember not liking the secondary controls that much.
Maybe it's not intuitive for me. And you know how I am with technology. Well, I can break it really easily.
When you're designing technology, that's your job, is to make it easy for people who say,
it should just work.
Yeah.
I just thought it would default. I can appreciate having the choice, because I think there are a lot of people. I'm not a huge fan of adaptive cruise control, so I appreciate having the choice. My issue was that it was so complicated getting there.
Yeah, and adaptive cruise is pretty good, but it's not right for every situation. And that's the same with every car, like
exactly.
Sometimes you want regular cruise.
So what are you driving anyway?
So this week I'm finishing up with a Subaru Outback XT Onyx Edition.
And my neighbor just bought a Subaru Outback on my recommendation, Subaru.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good wagon. It's priced well. Just
send the check to RebeccaDrives.com.
Exactly.
This one has the
or advertising dollars.
The WRX engine. So that's I think the bigger change, where before you had the 2.5 liter that had like 180 something horsepower. This gets the turbo 2.4 that has 260 something. So it's a lot more lively. It's actually pretty quick on its feet. Which is an interesting trick with the CVT that is it's good, but it's still dopey because it's a CVT. But it has a powerful bit of torque to it that was missing from the last Legacy and Outback that I drove. So that's good. The powertrain has been upgraded. It looks good. It's pretty comfortable in this trim. Again, it's priced pretty well. It doesn't drive great. That's my problem. Like it's a solid platform. You can tell that they've done a lot of work to make sure that the body structure is pretty rigid. So it rides okay, but it's bouncy, as my wife described it. And it's sort of like a mid-rise. So it's not a full SUV, but they've taken a wagon and made it an SUV. And so they've added some sort of nautical motion to the to the suspension, which I don't really like. It'll hang on if you make it, go through a set of curves. It'll do fine. It's not a bad.
Is it underdamped or oversprung?
It feels oversprung. Like it's not stiff in that sense though. Like oversprung would imply that it's like harsh over bumps. It's not really. It's what it is. It's not enough roll bar. It leans over, but it also like tosses your head around a little bit. And that's
was this in every situation? Like where no. Do you think it's because it's got to have that like level of off-road or ruggedness to it?
Well, I think they've had to balance a lot of things. It's got higher ride height. It's got to have compliance. It's okay. It's good over bad pavement. It's actually decent on like gravel roads and stuff. I thought it was actually quite in its element there. It felt really good. So they've had to make this all-arounder. And so in certain situations, like the middle of a curve on a broken pavement back road here in New England, where there's like a zillion of that, it'll start to bounce your head around a little bit, and so it feels a little bit rough but not harsh, which is we're using all kinds of adjectives that don't make any sense. But I didn't love the ride, and I didn't love the handling because I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's trusty. It's not going to get you in trouble, so that's fine. The on center feel, like if you're on the highway or something, it sort of wanders a bit, and that's something that I think is probably a function of the tires and the tuning and all of that together. But really, when I'm on the highway, I want a car that like locks in.
Kind of like a mid-70s old Cutlass.
Yeah, not quite as bad. You can't steer it with your pinky, like
yeah, I'm sure that's what they were going for.
Fully lock to lock. It's a good car. They really know their market. I love how Subaru is they've got a lot of thought put into the way you can accessorize it for the stuff you're going to do with it. And so you can get the different roof rack options and the different storage and stuff like that. They're really dog friendly brand, which I think is cool because once you become a dog owner, this is one of those things that nobody tells you, but once you become a dog owner like that, they are more precious to you than your children. And you want to take them everywhere and do everything with them. And the cars, Subaru is a brand that's really attentive to that. And I really liked I actually quite liked the interior in this one. It has, it's like their version of MBTEX. It's like Subaru Tex or Star Tex or whatever upholstery. So it's not leather, but it's not like cheap vinyl. It's a material that feels good to the touch. It looks good. The seats are pretty comfortable in this particular one. So, I give it marks for design and interior quality, which are two areas. Interior quality is an area that Subaru has just struggled with in the past. So they're coming up on the competition there. The problem is ergonomics have taken a whack, and Subaru has always been good with ergonomics, but they've got this new tablet size center screen that's like their version of Census, and it's not any better.
I remember that thing. That thing is huge in the center. Yeah. Because I went on this drive.
11-inch screen.
It's a big screen. It's nice when you do CarPlay. It uses a portion of the screen for CarPlay and still leaves some other stuff down below. But, the secondary controls are confusing. And, they do have a volume and tuning knob, though. They do. I will give
which I do appreciate.
Props for that. Sometimes that volume knob became very unresponsive, so you just sit there spinning it and you'd get nothing, and then all of a sudden it'd be like full blast and then off, and it's just like So it's a great way to want to punch the screen. I don't love the graphics on it. I think that all automakers get a little too distracted making these things look really sharp for presentations or brochures, and what is really necessary when you consider what you're asking people to do is take the colors out, increase the contrast, don't get too fancy, don't use animations and stuff, and make these things really easy to glance at. And that's one of the problems I have, is that the elements are kind of small. But like the HVAC controls, when you go to adjust them, they'll come up larger on the screen. You can do what you need to do, but you have to stare at it to figure out what it is you want when you're new to the car. I think as an owner, this probably goes away a little bit, but you still got to look at it to figure out what you're trying to ask it to do. And if you look too long, it times out and it shrinks back down. Oh. It's like, no, leave the controls where I want
That's
them.
Brutal.
This is why none of that stuff should ever be in a touchscreen interface. It needs to be physical controls that don't move. They're always in the same place. You can do it by feel without looking at them.
Look, there's nothing wrong with.
I would agree with you there.
Like I get it. You want to leave it in auto. Fine. Like that's the answer, is leave it in auto. But that's not all of us want that.
Well, you should. Well, just like
I get it.
Pepperoni pizza.
I love a good pepperoni pizza. But you have to, as a designer of machines that people are going to use too. Like you've got to create more than one way to skin a cat, because
hey, none of that.
That's where you have to study, and it's like some people are going to do it exactly the way you want to do it, and that's great. But other people they're going to break your stuff, and you have to account for them breaking your stuff and make it so that your stuff doesn't break, and the input mode doesn't become really frustrating. So I thought that there was some annoyances. Another thing, like there was no real place to stick my phone. Except for a little cubby up in front of the shifter, which is also where the the port for USB and for CarPlay is. And that's actually awkward to plug the cable in. Like I had to finagle my wrist around to get in there. You can't.
Yeah, that's not okay.
And I was like,
is there a USB port in the center console?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe under the armrest or something there is.
Yeah.
But, the charging port is right there.
Well, because, there still is that conversation of that you should be putting your phone away, and that's
why I asked, a lot of times you'll find a USB port up in the front, like what you just described, Dan, and then additional ports in the center console bin under the armrest. So you plug in there, put your phone in there, and then you don't touch it again while you're driving. That may be
easier, but then you forget the phone, again, accounting for people and us weirdos. So that's not a bad thing I'll look for that. But it's difficult to plug stuff into that one that's up in front of the shifter. Like you can't actually reach the port under the way they've designed the opening. It's
right. So it's very awkward to get around.
Yeah. And that was surprising. I think that it's definitely overall, it's a great car. If you want a legacy an Outback, you know what you're going to get. It's matured steadily with each generation. It hasn't lost the Subaru character, which I think that's a pretty neat trick because it's gotten a lot more refined every time they've redone it.
Is this also designed and sold in Japan? Because I'm wondering if it's easier on the right-hand drive.
I don't know.
To reach those controls. Because I run into this with other cars.
It seems like they're pretty, where these are, they're not tilted one way or another. They're just straight.
I'm looking at a photo of it
right now, but I just wonder if you are with your, if you're sitting on the right, if you're on the driver's seat on the right side, is it easier to slot in as opposed to sitting on the left side and then you're reaching, kind of reaching around the center console or reaching around the gear selector
it's designed
and such.
For the way left hand. I'll sit in the passenger seat and fiddle it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it would be from looking at this because it's, everything's all pretty much lined up along the center line of the car. And it doesn't look like it would make any difference really which direction you were coming at it from.
But I'll play with it because, just the way your wrists work and stuff, that's interesting. I'll fiddle with that. We'll
I'd be if you still have the car, I think that'd be curious to see if it does make any difference. It's just an idea to try that because I run into that. I remember sitting in a Lexus one time and the footwell came out. I was in the driver's seat and the footwell came out and hit me. I remember talking about on the show on this. It hit me in the knee and I was like, what is going on with this? And it's because they didn't change it for the right and left hand side. And so you're fine as a passenger with that there, but once you become the driver, it causes problems. And so that's what made me think of it. Like, is it an ergonomics thing? But I agree, Sam. Looking at the pictures, it doesn't seem like it would be, but it's it's a nice looking interior. They did a nice job, I think, with materials. And I remember having a little bit different experience. I quite enjoyed driving it. At the same time, I hadn't spent a lot of time in a Subaru, and so we did off-roading. We took it on some nice trails and stuff, and it was really, really good for that. So I always give a car that is good on off-road. I always give it a little bit more leeway on-road if it can, if it's well-behaved on-road as well. But you're always, it sounds like there's just some compromises that are going on. I'd love to have one here at home at some point to really just drive it on the highway on paved roads and see how it is.
And it's not bad. I think what I wanted was it to be a little bit more plush on the road, or just a little bit more disciplined with the way it sort of holds the center lane on the highway.
Right? Yeah.
Some of that's personal preference. I think if you are looking for a vehicle like this, there's not a whole lot of choice, especially now that Buick's leaving the market. There's the Volkswagen is a little smaller.
You mean that like semi-wagon crossover kind of feel?
And then you've got more expensive choices. So this is in a really sweet spot. This is under $40,000. It's really well equipped. It's very nicely outfitted. It's comfortable. It looks good. It's really functional. It has all the safety tech, the eyesight stuff, and that actually works pretty well. The adaptive cruise works well. The lane centering actually works.
It's got all-wheel drive.
Decently. Yeah. With the new engine, it has pleasing power. It's actually quick, and it doesn't use as much gas as the old the 3.6R used to be the way to get a powerful Outback, and that one sounded awesome because it was a flat six, sounded like a Porsche, but it swilled fuel. This one is going to give you better fuel economy, especially with the CVT. So it's a really solid update. I think the controls and stuff that bugs us may not bug other folks quite as much, although, given the wide demographic of people that buy these, some people are going to get it and really immediately take to it. Other people, like my parents, are in their 70s, and my mom drives a Forester. I think some of that stuff, and she told me, she's like, it does all kinds of stuff I don't know how to do. I was like, that's kind of good and bad.
Cute.
Like, it's good that it defaults to being on, but it's bad that, like, you're not going to know what it's doing when it does what it does, Well,
and keep in mind too, that Onyx edition, you mentioned the water repellent upholstery.
Yeah.
And so that Onyx is a kind of a special specific audience.
It's the dog car.
But it is, as opposed to like the limited or that touring, the limited XT, the top of the line, so the touring XT rather is the top of the line. But, that Onyx edition does have some specifically designed features, particularly that water repellent upholstery.
Yeah, it may actually even have a different suspension tune on it that is a little different than the limited or the touring. So, it's got the dual function X mode, the hill descent control.
Yep. Yeah. It's a cool, as you said, like, it's a cool looking vehicle. It's, but it is designed. I mean, maybe that suspension is a little bit looser for off-road.
Yeah, that could be, it felt great when I had it on gravel roads. I wanted to go fast and rally drive.
Well, and again, that's what you're going to compromise a little bit on, right?
Yeah.
Like when you have that feeling, of being able, that confidence of being able to go fast on a gravel road, that same confidence may not translate quite as easily to pavement.
So, all right. The other stuff I was starting, I had for the storm, my mobile office was a 2020 Ram 1500 Laramie Night Edition. This was a $68,000 1500. Which is absurdly expensive. And I don't think it even had that many options. I think it had a couple of expensive option packages. One of them was, I think, $3,000. The other was like $4,000. But I'm looking at the sticker. I'm like, it doesn't seem like it's that much of a stretch to get from 46, which is the base price of this model, to 68, which is where it wound up. It's like, that's so much money for a 1500. It's a nice truck. It was the Laramie, so it's nicely appointed inside. It was very comfortable to leave it idling in the driveway while I tethered and charged up stuff. I had my video editing stuff.
How long did you guys lose power for?
We lost power for about a day, 24 hours.
Okay.
So just long enough to ruin a bunch of stuff in the fridge.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. My whole fridge went.
Yeah. I went and borrowed a generator. The truck was handy to pick up a generator from my brother-in-law, and we get this. It's a big one. It's 8,500 watts, and we put it down, start it up, plug stuff in the house, and then 3 hours later, zip, all the power comes back.
Oh,
of course.
But that's okay. So, this had the e-torque V8, which is good. It feels a little bit more punchy than you'd expect because the Hemi is a little bit has a lot to deal with the Ram 1500. This is a heavy truck, and that is what sort of dings it in payload. Trailering is fine, but the Ram you have to sort of carefully look at in 1500s, like what can I actually put in this and also put people in and stuff, because its payload number is really a function of which engine, which drive system, and which cab you've got. So it's a really nice luxury car. I don't think it's, as much a pickup as it is just a classical full frame luxury car. This is your Imperial.
With a really big trunk.
Yeah, with an enormous trunk. And I actually didn't like the tonneau cover that it has. There's a 3-piece tonneau that folds up. It folds up weird. It's kind of cumbersome. That's an accessory, so just watch out for that. I liked all the features. It had power running boards, and it had the tailgate. I don't know what the Ram tailgate is.
Split tailgate.
Yeah, but it had the split tailgate that opens like a door, a pair of doors or down, and it's very clever, and it looks like a durable solution that isn't quite as fiddly as the GMC Multi Pro tailgate that's like a Swiss Army knife. So the Ram is easy to love. It's very comfortable. It rides and handles like it weighs a gazillion pounds because it does. It's geared well though. The powertrain is really good. I think this engine transmission combo is as worthy of praise as any of the GM small block stuff. It's just a really good powertrain. And the e-torque I think helps fill in the gaps. So it's a nice truck, but it's also like if you're buying a $68,000 pickup, you need to address your priorities. The 1500 is not where you should be. If you need a work truck, you should be buying a heavy duty truck, which is also going to be nice for $70,000. So that's sort of my quick take on that. And then the Ioniq PHEV, I quite liked that, but I think that is a dead man walking. Just that car segment. They need to take that tech and put it in regular cars and crossovers.
Which is to their credit is what they're doing. You've got the Sonata hybrid, the Elantra hybrid. There's a Sonata plug-in hybrid, I think, coming back again. Same basic thing, but with a 2-liter engine instead of the 1.6. We'll probably see that plug-in in the next generation Tucson. So they're putting it into a bunch of stuff.
But they're also expanding the Ioniq brand name.
Right.
Well,
that's good because
as we talked about last time.
Did we talk about that last week?
You guys did talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
I thought we talked about it last week.
The door is definitely closing for this sort of dedicated hybrid model. Toyota's not selling as many Priuses as it used to, and I think this Ioniq is the same thing. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. So it's a very good hybrid. It actually felt pretty sporty to drive in a surprising way. There's just genuine steering feel, and the low rolling resistance tires are just the right amount of greasy, so you can actually slide it around a little bit, which I thought was surprising and amusing. And it's this I had the limited, so it's nicely appointed, and I didn't find that actually the touch sensitive switches as objectionable here. The Hyundai infotainment and secondary controls are better done. So
I think I'm getting that vehicle in a couple of weeks. Actually,
I hope it's not the one that I drove. I mean.
I'll look and see.
Own scars on it. I actually didn't do anything to damage it. Just,
Thank you. I'll look and see which. I don't know if she's giving me the trim level that I'm getting.
Yeah, it's a nice car. I'll be interested to see what you have to say about it. It's a little loud on the highway, but that's I think just the function of hybrids. They're all kind of like that.
Oh, you know what? I'm not actually getting it until October.
That's not that far away.
The Hyundai Ioniq Electric Limited.
Okay.
So that's the battery. That's the battery electric version. So no engine at all in that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one I'm getting. I'll keep you posted.
All right. So why don't we go back to Ram for a minute? They made a little bit of an announcement yesterday.
A little bit.
Yeah. There's a new Ram 1500 variant that's coming this fall called the TRX, which we actually first heard about. They did a concept version back in 2016 that they took to the Texas State Fair, and during FCA's Capital Markets Day in 2018, when they were doing their latest 5-year plan, they said that they're going to build a production version of the TRX, and now it's finally here. And they put a Hellcat in it. And
as you do.
Well, if you're FCA, that is what you do.
Well, it's okay. So
Hellcat everything.
This annoyed a lot of people who felt the need to comment like, they're trashing the environment, and I understand that it's not a fuel efficient vehicle. That is a definite concern, but also FCA needs to make revenue. Yep. So that's another concern. And people have shown that they'll buy very expensive pickups. And so, yes, it's half pointless, but also people will buy it and they don't have anything else. They don't have car platforms. They're trying to finish up their deal with PSA that's going to open up a lot of stuff. So it doesn't make any sense for them to not do what they're doing. Like their only option really is just Hellcat everything.
Look, there's 400 other different types of cars to buy. Buy something else if you don't like it. Nobody's forcing anybody to buy this vehicle. So
Right.
I get it. I understand the concerns, but it's just great fun. I mean, it's,
it probably will be a blast, to run this thing across the desert. 700 horsepower. I mean, I've driven the Rebel, which is really good.
I
off-road.
like the Rebel. Yeah, that's a good truck.
And that's just even with a V6, it's really good. But this thing, with a 702 horsepower supercharged V8, is going to outdo everything that's out there right now. What's going to be interesting, is it's funny, TRX, they call this thing the apex predator of full size off road trucks, like the Tyrannosaurus Rex was. That's hence the name.
But I actually wonder, what's the Tyrannosaurus Rex actually an apex predator, or do we just think it was?
Well, everybody perceives it as the apex predator. Who the hell knows?
Based on what I saw on social media,
they've done the same kind of thing though. Like the T-Rex had a huge head and tiny little chicken arms, and it was all imbalanced. That's exactly what you have here: a huge engine, all imbalanced,
and tiny little arms.
to their credit, they have. I think they have actually balanced it out with the chassis as well. I mean, they've made basically completely revamped the chassis. This thing's 8 inches wider than a standard 1500. So it's got a lot more wheel travel capability. It's really set up for high speed off road driving, or low speed off road driving for that matter. And FCA knows how to do off road stuff. As they've shown with Jeep and even with the Ram Rebel and the Power Wagon. But the thing is, the original T-Rex, eventually turned into crude oil. This thing, this really seems like the end of an era. This is probably, this and the next generation Raptor will probably be the last of this type of truck that we see with a big, powerful internal combustion engine. And rumor has it that the new Raptor is going to go back to a V8 instead of the EcoBoost V6. But, we also have coming, a year from now, the GMC Hummer EV, Rivian, at some point, the Cybertruck, Ford's got an electric F-150 coming. And, I mean, these, especially the Hummer, and the Cybertruck are going to be, really powerful, electric pickups. And that Hummer is going to be very off-road capable too. So, you're going to, this is like the last of a generation, before you start to get into these electric variants of these things.
I think too, the electric stuff is going to, because of just the weight and the packaging, that's going to change the way those trucks actually go across the terrain. You're going to be able to take the electric trucks and they'll fly really stably. Mm-hmm. They're heavy, but once you get them airborne, they're going to be stable. And
you're going to have momentum on your side.
Yeah. So that's going to be a different kind of truck. So I'll be interested to see what that is. I do think you're right. This probably is sort of the last gasp of this stuff. These are your Superbirds and your Daytonas. That's what these are now. So get them. And it's interesting too. Like you said that the original T-Rex turned into crude oil. This T-Rex is brings it all full circle because it's going to consume all of that crude oil.
Yep. And then go extinct.
Yeah. Metaphor. We love you. So I understand the criticism of it, but I think that it's a really well thought out package. I think it complements the Raptor in the marketplace. And it does stuff that the Raptor doesn't as well. Like it has carved out its niche, and there's room for these things. So let's see how long it lasts. It'll be a fad.
I mean, they'll probably build these for a couple of years, and then, wind it down. Or as long as people are willing to buy them, really, as long as there's enough customers for it, they'll keep building them.
They're just
if I lived anywhere that this would be appropriate, as in like out with access to deserts and off roads and stuff like that, I think this thing would be an absolute riot. I love it.
I think you should definitely get one of these in Greenwich and just, go up along the
go into the back country and show them how it's done.
Lines, right? You're not actually supposed to be there, but see if you can get to Canada along the high tension wires.
Draw a straight line from your house to Canada and see if you can get there with this thing.
And do it while you're towing your own house. Like, just
of course, my tiny house.
Yeah, I'm going to tow my house to Quebec. Yeah,
it's awesome.
Good for them for like keeping things rolling. It is a business after all, and so we don't always agree with every choice that those companies make, but they need to stay around so they can make the things that we want them to make. I'm really interested in the small cars the sales of the Ram TRX will fund.
Yeah, well, and they're also doing a lot of electrification. Not so much right now until after they finish the PSA merger on full battery electric stuff, but they're doing a lot of plug-in hybrids, starting with the Wrangler this fall. And Jeep recently released a teaser video of the Wrangler plug-in, the 4xe as they call it, where you just see this Wrangler kind of silently going through down this trail and along a river and past the animals. So they're not completely ignoring that marketplace.
Yeah, they're working on it. They need to get some working capital going, and so the business side of that is just really, I think, holding stuff up for both. I don't want to say FCA anymore, but getting the Stellantis merger complete will allow all the brands to do what they're doing.
Oh, that's all right. Sorry.
Yeah, but talking. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just, after you said Stellantis, I said bless you.
Oh, yes.
Little joke.
Still hate the name. But talking about the Wrangler is a good place for us to pivot to the Bronco and some first impressions of that one, because they are direct competitors in the marketplace. And we were following a Wrangler Unlimited last night in the car, and I was telling my wife, I was like, I really want to try the Bronco. Like, I think that's going to be a really cool vehicle and different enough on its own. But you guys have seen more of it than I have. So does that hold up?
What did you think, Rebecca? You saw it yesterday in New York.
I did see it for the first time yesterday. And
in its natural habitat.
Yes. Of course, right outside of Wall Street, exactly where it's supposed to be.
Did you crush some bankers? Please crush some bankers. Never mind.
I really liked it a lot. I think that they did some really thoughtful design elements to it. As I've said before, it looks like it's supposed to look. I think they did really thoughtful things. I love on top of the dash, there's the gear, this gear rack where you can plug in things like your GoPro cameras and stuff. And it's really, that is one of those like celebrations of how this vehicle is going to be used. I liked the fact that it had auxiliary buttons already pre-wired and connected to the fuse, where you can add on lights on the top and different accessories. Like it works directly with how people are going to use this product, and they recognize that, they embrace it, and they celebrated it. And I think those kinds of elements are really, really cool. It was easy to get in and out of. The 4-door was a little bit easier because it had the running boards. The 2-door sits high. It had 32-inch tires on it. But once inside, I think they did a good job of refining the interior. I think Ford tends to do some pretty nice interiors. And this one had some elements to it that I really enjoyed. I mean, it was one of those, like, I'm always kind of looking to see, okay, did you think of this and did you think of that? And pretty much everything that I wanted it to have, it has in it. They had this weight-bearing pull-out table in the back that then you can use to climb on it to the top to adjust things on the roof, which was really, really clever. That was probably the only wrinkle, was that I would have loved to have had a footwell built into the corner to be able to get onto that table a little bit more gracefully to then adjust the roof rack things. But just the fact that they thought of making that table a weight-bearing option was again just how they clearly listened to research, read research, and appreciated it. And I think it is going to give Jeep a run for its money. It's going to give people an alternative that they haven't really had before.
Yeah, and as of last week, they had over 165,000 pre-orders for the Bronco 2-door and 4-door. They haven't said how many orders they've gotten for the Bronco Sport yet, but I mean, there's clearly a lot of interest in this vehicle, and we did publish a special episode last week where I talked to Rob Gilardi, who was the chief interior designer for the Bronco 2-door, 4-door, and Scott Anderson, who's the interior design lead for the Bronco Sport, about some of those design decisions they made.
Did you see the Bronco Sport yet?
Oh yeah, I rode in it.
They didn't have one there either.
Yeah, they had. I suspect that the reason they didn't bring one to New York on Monday is because they were really emphasizing the two, they had the F-150 and the Broncos there,
right? Yeah,
and the press release was really talking about how Ford makes more vehicles in the U.S. than anybody else. Really focusing on that whole made in America thing, and the Bronco Sport's actually going to be made in Mexico.
Yep.
So we'll just,
womp womp.
But the event I went to last week, they did have the Bronco Sport in addition to the 2-door and 4-door, and we actually got to go for rides in both the Bronco Sport and the Bronco 2-door.
Okay, cool.
At this new ORV park that is opening up here about an hour north of Detroit, and both are really impressive vehicles. The Bronco Sport is very much a competitor for the Jeep Compass Trailhawk.
Right, and we should remind listeners that it's a car base. That's one of the main.
It's based on the same.
It's a very different vehicle, actually.
Yeah. So they took the Escape this time when they redesigned the Escape and they split it. They made the Escape more car-like because they were also creating this separate vehicle, this rugged off-road vehicle that where Jeep has the range of compasses, and the same goes for their other crossovers that are within the same vehicle are more car-like and true off-road capability. The Bronco Sport is the off-road rugged version of that, and it's got a lot of neat things like that taller roof in the back, that stepped roof, so you can get a rack that goes inside and put your mountain bikes inside the vehicle, so they're not outside exposed, likely to get stolen.
That's great, but my one complaint about that is it consumes the rear seat.
Yeah, it leaves you with only 2 seats.
Yeah, so that's great for that young active couple who can afford the car.
Yeah,
that goes away when there's kids.
One thing I'll be curious about, the roll bar in the Wrangler is in between the passenger, it's in between the front seats and the back seats, and the roll bar's in the middle there. The roll bar on this is behind on the 4-door, I believe it's behind the second row.
Yeah.
And I asked about crash test worthiness and they haven't gone through that yet. So I'll be curious to see like rollover and how that.
I expect it'll be, comparable to what
I would think so, but it was a notable engineering change that they've done. And I hadn't seen a car with that. I was trying to remember then, like vehicles like the Evoque doesn't even have a roll bar.
Yeah. This one, you've got a full roll bar system in here that goes, across and down the A-pillars. So, I don't expect that to be an issue.
I would think that they would have done they did the simulation testing on it.
Yeah.
But it is a notable design difference.
The Bronco 2-door that I got to ride in was actually it had the 4-cylinder engine and the 7-speed manual transmission. So we didn't get to drive. We were riding along with Ford engineers doing the driving. And the 2-door, that 7-speed is actually really a 6-speed plus a crawler gear. So when you put it in that crawler gear and put it in 4-wheel drive low, that's where you get that 95-to-1 crawl ratio. And we were going through the course just in 4 high. He didn't even put it in 4 low, and it had no problem at all going through all this stuff. Through all the different kind of terrain that they had in there. It was, I think, it wasn't perhaps quite as challenging as some of the terrain on the Chrysler Proving Grounds off-road course. But
that we had gone through.
I think that it will probably do just fine. I mean, they've been posting a bunch of videos and photos the last couple of weeks of this thing running Rubicon, along with some Wranglers. So I have no doubt this thing's going to do great. To what you're talking about with the design touches, some of the neat things they did that Rob talked about was, at the ends of the dashboard are cut away, they're angled away. And then you've got those grab handles that are on there, which are, by the way, are removable, as is the grab handle that's on the center console. So you can reposition them. But when you look through the grab handle, if you have the doors off, you can actually see right through there. And they've cut away the dash at the end to really maximize that visibility, so you can see all around you. And they've also got when you're running at low, below 20 miles an hour, you can have the surround view cameras on all the time. So they did that. They had the surround view cameras on, so you can see what's right in front of you.
And that's so critical when you're off road.
Oh yeah. So you know, when you're coming up over the crest of a hill or going over a boulder, you want to be able to see where everything is around you. Because when you're coming up a steep hill and then going over the top, you can't see what's on the other side. Having that camera there on allows you to see what's there, which is really, really important. So it's, I think the Bronco is going to do fine, and that the 4-cylinder, I think it's going to be about 275 horsepower in the Bronco. It's got plenty of power and torque. And the ones we rode in had the 32-inch wheels on them. There's also an option for 35s. And also, in the one I was in, it had the drain plug in the floor, so you can get the rubberized floor with a drain plug that you can take out, so you can hose down the interior.
Is that standard? No,
it's optional.
Oh, okay. Because the both of the vehicles they had them, and it's I love that.
It's standard on some trim levels, optional on others. So, there's just a lot of really, really cool things they did with it. And, the doors on the 4-door, because they made them frameless, so that you can stash them in the back. And, when they decided to make that change so you could stash the doors in the back, they actually had to do a lot of re-engineering, to make, so you could slide them into these slots in the back of the cargo area.
And then they also have those cool tubular doors as well that they had, which were great.
Be available as a factory accessory.
Yeah, those were neat looking.
There's going to be a lot of accessories. I mean, one of the things that that works out great for FCA with the Wrangler is there's this huge range of accessories you can buy, both through Mopar as well as through third parties, and there's a lot of profit margin on those accessories.
It's like a Barbie doll for grown men.
Yeah, exactly.
Or G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
we're gender neutral there. Sure. They're absolutely killing it on the marketing part of it too. I mean, I think that they're really doing an amazing job keeping momentum up on these things. It doesn't come out until the next spring. I think it is a year. Is it a year from now? Almost
less than about 9 months from now.
Early 2021 production. Yeah. So, but they're really doing a great job with this buzz, because there's a ton of buzz and there's a lot of people really interested in it. One of the things too, to that point, the guy that showed me around, Esteban, he said that the knobs and the bolts that you as a consumer can adjust and take off and such, they're all marked with Bronco, so that whether you can make adjustments to that particular bolt as you come across it in the vehicle, which again I thought was really just a really thoughtful touch.
Mm-hmm. It's
cool. They've done a fantastic job. It's really, I can't wait for it to come out, and I can't wait to drive it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they really learned, I think, from the Raptor, a lot of lessons about how to do a vehicle like this, a special vehicle with an off-road focus, and they clearly studied real hard about the Wrangler as well. So,
well, I mean, they've got, they take advantage of, 60, 70 years of Wrangler sales and sales and use,
It's good.
But no, they did. It'll be interesting to see how people, if there's an authenticity, because Jeep has obviously been in this landscape for years and decades now. all the way through. And so it'll be interesting to see how the consumer, how many people convert and trade over and go over from a Jeep to a Bronco.
Yeah. I think there's going to be that crossover audience, and there's also just going to be people who buy the Bronco who wouldn't consider the Jeep. And so they've found a little niche for themselves.
Yeah.
So good for them. It's exciting. It's exciting times. Two completely
fun.
We talked about the Ram TRX.
There will be an electrified version of this, at some point, either a hybrid or plug-in hybrid, that's going to be arriving sometime in the next couple of years.
Yeah. So get ready. Hopefully we're all still employed by that time. We can afford it. All right. Well, so you know what? We talked about the Ioniq last time. I'm pretty sure. If we didn't, we'll talk about it next time.
Okay.
Because we have some questions to get to. And it's
so let's start with the most important one.
Yes, I was going to say.
From Groove-Tini. In light of the looming pepperoni shortage, what are your thoughts on pizza toppings? Is pineapple acceptable? Why or why not? Please feel free to personally attack each other's character over this. And I suspect that I will be doing exactly that momentarily, Rebecca.
No. Hang on. Do we need to? Okay. There's a little bit of backstory here. So
yes, we need to fill in the backstory here.
Yesterday, Rebecca tweeted about the pepperoni shortage. And I purposely trolled her by saying, as long as ham and pineapple hold out, which she replied, those should never be allowed on pizza. And apparently there's still like a pizza Twitter thread going on that's like with car Twitter. So I don't know if it's really related or separate or whatever.
And somebody took this way too seriously and talked about freedom of choice and all this BS. And it's like,
just giving each other
dial back and step away for a minute. This is a pizza discussion. I was really pissed off by that, I have to say.
I think it
was just, it's like, come on.
Not everything is that serious. We were just giving each other some grief. Like, eat what you want to eat, but like, yeah. And that's sort of the point I got to. I was like, look, to each their own. I just, I don't like mushrooms. I will eat the hell out of a pineapple and ham pizza, but I get that some people find that disgusting.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, I actually do love ham on pizza. It just has to be called bacon.
Well, that's a different part of the pig.
Well, there's a distinction between ham and bacon. There are two different parts of the pig.
You can mix them.
So I'm not adverse to pig on pizza. Right. It just has to be called bacon.
Yeah. Well, and I offended somebody in Canada too by saying like, well, Hawaiian pizza is a Canadian invention. He was like, what are you talking about Canadian pizza? I was like, oh my God.
This really took on a life of its own. Like I just was upset about the pepperoni shortage.
Yeah, which is but so
to answer Drew's question.
Let's answer this question.
Absolutely, pineapple is acceptable. Anything you want to put on a pizza, if it suits your taste, go for it.
That's
the beauty of pizza. You can.
It's the TRX of pizza.
Except it won't be extinct.
You've got a very expansive big tent take on pizza, but there is like the actual like Pizza Institute in Naples. I think it's Naples. That like they're very serious about it, and like the margarita pizza is a particular thing. It was named after the princess, I think, and like
and that's okay. They are allowed to be serious about pizza.
Yeah. The
Pizza Institute in Naples is allowed to be serious about pizza.
But like some places will do the Hawaiian pizza better than others too. Like you gotta. I've had some bad ones.
I have too. All of them.
Yeah.
Kidding. No, sorry.
If you do it in like the oven, like you get a little char on the pineapple, you get that Maillard reaction going in, or the sugars.
It caramelizes, right? Yeah. You have to caramelize it.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah. It's still not it's not my jam. I respect people. My own brother-in-law, the one that I picked up from JFK an hour ago on our conversation, he absolutely loves pineapple and ham. I get it. He also doesn't have a single drop of Italian blood in him. Unlike me,
well, that's why
he's fully half Italian.
Right? That's why that's not pizza, buddy. Like, fine, whatever. Have your bread with vegetables, but that's not like it's not pizza.
Okay, so yes.
And next week we'll get into the whole discussion of Chicago style versus New York style.
Oh, I don't think there is a discussion there.
All right.
Well, and there's
one.
like Detroit style pizza, which is a thing I didn't know about either. Yeah.
And then there's the Greek style in Boston that I became acquainted with, unfortunately, through college.
Unfortunately. Well,
that was sub-op
as well. It turns out, actually, that Greek families own a lot of the pizza restaurants around, at least around here in New England. I don't know if it's...
They should stick to Nick's Roast Beef in Beverly, Massachusetts. That's my go-to Greek restaurant.
In Ann Arbor is a Greek family that owns Cottage Inn Pizza.
Yeah.
So. All right. Next up from Robert Grace. Loves the show, listens every week. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
Now we've offended his pizza.
This is more of a comment than a question, I think. I think the day has passed, long past, that it's okay for professional car reviewers not to have level 2 chargers at their home or office. The idea that EVs are less convenient than internal combustion is really wrong, but you can't know that unless you have easy access to a $500 level 2 charger. So who would like to comment or respond to that?
I understand that. I agree. I fully agree with Robert. And if somebody wants to install a level 2 charger in my home, I would be happy to accept that.
Well, no, but see, I think that's almost like the sort of like those are the tools that you use to do the job. So that's like the carpenter and his.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would love to have a level 2 charger, and it's something that I have explored. So it is something that is on the list of things to do. The less convenient versus more convenient. It's not to say that EVs are not less convenient. My statement on that is that we have not done a good job as an industry of describing how and why. And also you're assuming, I think that for multifamily house people, that is a whole different argument. And many people have agreed that academics in particular have agreed that we haven't solved that challenge yet. I do think that we should look at working with municipalities, working with builders, working with people to have a level 2 charger as part of a new build. As I mentioned, I don't have a generator here at home, so I didn't have power. And were I to build a house today, I would certainly pre-wire for both a generator and a level 2 charger. I think that's a really, really good thing. But I guess I don't see going to the gas station for 5 minutes as a huge inconvenience. And the idea that an EV is somehow more convenient, I haven't quite accepted that yet.
I guess it can be if you're only always charging at home and you don't ever consume all the range. And so I suppose that there is that argument. Like, yeah, I have an electric car. I haven't gone to a gas station in months or years or whatever. I can see that.
I can see that too. Yeah.
No, that's perfectly legitimate.
Right. When I will tell you though that when I have had an EV, a full EV, even, so let's pretend like I do have a level 2 charger in my garage. It's still a matter of taking that out in the middle of a snowstorm or a huge rainstorm and having to plug it in. That is not as convenient as driving to a gas station underneath a covered parking area and being able to get gas at a little bit more of my convenience, frankly, when I need to get it, as opposed to needing to charge every single night. And again, we're talking about different ranges and things like that. But so I guess, I've been in that situation where I didn't have a choice. I had to charge, and it was absolutely torrential rain out, and it was a mess, and it was not a nice experience having to do that.
I think the real answer here is that there is no silver bullet. For many customers, an EV is far more convenient. If you live in a single family home, and you're parking the car in a garage,
right,
and you've got a level 2 charger, you get out, plug it in, go in the house, you're done. Get
Absolutely.
out in the morning, you unplug it, you drive.
Totally respect that.
But there are, as you said, a lot of people that, if they live in a single family home, if they live in a city, they may have to rely on street parking where it's not convenient. Or you live in a multi-unit home, and for those people, that's why we're seeing things like what we talked about recently with GM and EVgo, trying to make charging more convenient by putting DC fast chargers at the places where people are going on a regular basis, and they're going to be staying there for at least 20 to 30 minutes at a time, like grocery stores, so that you're taking away the friction, because for a lot of people there is still friction, and there is no one solution that works for everyone.
Right.
One other thing is that we don't get plug-in vehicles that with that high a level of frequency. Whenever I do get one, I do plug it in. I don't have a level 2 charger yet. I have been looking at what it would take to put one in. But I haven't gotten around to it because I just don't get plug-in vehicles that frequently. But I do plug it in when I do. And, I also go and use things like level 2 chargers, public chargers, and DC fast chargers in order to see what the experience is like for consumers that have to rely on those. Because that's also part of the ownership experience for many people, is relying on public charging.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, so, to Robert's point, I'm actually having my electrician come out to the house to look at installing a generator. I had one quote that was $15,000. Thank you, but I'm going to pass on that one. And I'm going to ask him also about level 2 chargers, because I do have a solar system. I know I've got a 220 volt running in my house, in my garage rather, and the panel is actually chucked just inside the opening to my garage. So it could potentially be quite easy. I have a perfect spot. I think I have a perfect spot for a wall hung charger. So I'm going to ask him about both of those things and installing that. So it'll be really, I'll definitely, of course, update everyone on what I hear about that. So it's something that, again, it's an iteration. I mean, houses didn't have Wi-Fi, or didn't have, Fios and things like that. And so we've got to try, though, and get as much of that installed as possible at a reasonable cost. And I would certainly encourage anyone, if you're building a house, like my neighbor is next door, and you may or may not hear the hammering of the jackhammer, but, make sure that you've got these things wired for sound, wired for a 220 volt, wired for fast charging.
Yeah, it is a good point, though. Like, and this is like, a lot of us are freelancers, so you can commit to purchasing the thing if you're getting a lot of EVs or something. Like, there is that point where it makes sense to actually purchase the hardware. And then, as a freelance automotive journalist, you can amortize, you can write it off for a bit. It's the same as like, there's no way I'm going to buy a really high-end camera, but when I need it, I'll rent it. It would be great for media loans if there was some way to give us experience with those chargers, but the car companies aren't going to install a charger in every reviewer's house. Like, that's not how that's
I actually know somebody who got a high-speed charger installed in their home by one of the, not a manufacturer, but one of the high-speed charger suppliers.
That's tricky.
Oh, we'll have to reach out to some of those companies and see if they want to do that for us.
Yeah. I'm always down for free.
So let's get one more here in before we have to go, from Robbie Bartholomew. And this is a fairly easy one. Robbie asks, I wonder whether the rules requiring vehicles to be at least 25 years old are due to the emissions of those vehicles. In other words, could I import a modern VW ID3 electric vehicle that has zero emissions? Robbie, the answer to your question is no. I looked up on the Customs and Border Protection website, and I'll put the link to the page in the show notes.
Cars go through CBP? Oh, I guess they do. Yeah, Customs.
Well, Customs. And so the way the rules are, it's actually 21 years for emissions. So after a car that's more than 21 years old, you don't have to update it to pass emissions requirements, modern emissions requirements. The 25-year threshold is actually for federal motor vehicle safety standards. And while an ID3 probably could pass things like the crash test requirements, it probably could pass the crash test requirements if you crash tested it. It definitely would not pass other requirements like some of the lighting requirements and various other rules. And so to import that, you would have to go through and basically do a one-off certification and federalize it to meet current U.S. Motor vehicle safety standards. If what you're interested in is something like the ID3, VW will be unveiling the production version of the ID4 in the next few weeks, and it will be going on sale here in the U.S. next year. It'll actually be built in Chattanooga and be offered available here. And there's also lots of other options, but no, you won't be able to import an ID3 right now, even though it has zero emissions.
And I know we have a couple of other questions, but let's get to those next time.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some good points there.
Yep.
All right. So keep the questions rolling in. And in the meantime, we'll keep our eyes on all the nonsense that goes on in the automotive market. So hit us up and we'll see everybody next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.